He was a janitor, quiet, humble, and worth more than $8 million. His name was Ronald Read, and when he passed away in 2014, he left his fortune to a small library and a local hospital. He did not win the lottery. He did not inherit wealth. He simply lived below his means, invested patiently, and allowed time to do what it does best: compound. When his story reached the news, people were stunned. How could someone so ordinary die so extraordinarily rich? Around that same time, a tech millionaire who once helped develop early wireless technology flaunted his fortune, throwing extravagant parties and showing off stacks of cash. Within a few years, he was bankrupt. Two men, two outcomes. One built wealth quietly, the other destroyed it publicly. The difference was not education, talent, or opportunity. It was behavior. That is the paradox of money. We assume wealth is created by intelligence, but more often, it is destroyed by emotion. This contrast captures what Morgan Housel spent years studying: how behavior outperforms brilliance. The Psychology of Money is not just a book about finance. It is a mirror. It shows that the way we think about money determines how we live with it. Money behaves like a lens. It reveals who you are under pressure, how patient you remain in uncertainty, how disciplined you stay when everyone else is losing control. You can master every formula, study every market trend, and still fail if you cannot master yourself. The greatest threat to wealth is not inflation or recession. It is ego, envy, and fear. The quiet panic when someone else wins faster, the envy disguised as motivation. Your portfolio drops 20%, and you refresh it 12 times an hour. That is not strategy. That is fear pretending to be logic. Human beings carry an unshakable illusion of control. We plan and save as if life will obey our spreadsheets. But every story of success hides a shadow called luck, and every failure has a partner named risk. In the 1970s, Bill Gates attended one of the few high schools in the world that had a computer. That single accident of timing gave him a decade-long head start. His closest friend, Kent Evans, was just as bright, but he died in a climbing accident before graduation. 2 lives, 2 outcomes, 1 stroke of luck, 1 moment of risk. Luck and risk are twins, invisible but inseparable. The lesson is not to surrender control. It is to stay humble. Success is never fully earned, and failure is never fully deserved. Humility is a financial superpower. It keeps you cautious when others are reckless, patient when others are greedy, and grounded when shortcuts tempt you. Because even when you do everything right, life will still test your plans. That is why you add a risk tax to every goal. Save 5 to 10% more than you think you need. Assume 1 bad break each year. Money does not reward intelligence, it rewards survival. Ask yourself, are you managing money or just trying to manage the feeling of control? The goal is not to make the most money. It is to stay in the game long enough for time to work its quiet magic. Time is the most underrated factor of all. Part 2. The Hidden Traps of Wealth. Money makes a promise, freedom. But before it keeps that promise, it gives you an exam you do not even know you are taking. Most people do not lose wealth through bad investments. They lose it through small emotional mistakes repeated over time, spending to impress, chasing more when they already have enough, and confusing confidence with control. Getting rich requires optimism. Staying rich demands restraint. We celebrate boldness, but survival belongs to those who know when to stop. At his peak, Mike Tyson earned over $400 million. He bought tigers and mansions, symbols of a man trying to prove he had arrived. Within a decade, he was broke. He did not need more money. He needed boundaries. Sam Bankman-Fried, founder of one of the world's largest crypto exchanges, lost everything chasing what he called house money. The moment you stop asking why you need more, you start building your own collapse. It is the same story today. The investor refreshing crypto charts at 3 a.m., convinced the next spike will finally fix his anxiety. Greed is the silent wealth killer. It hides behind ambition, disguised as progress. The hardest financial skill is not earning money. It is knowing when you have enough. Modern life feeds an invisible addiction to comfort, validation, and endless growth. Notifications, upgrades, Endless comparisons. The noise never ends. We think abundance will silence anxiety, but it only amplifies it. The line between success and self-destruction is not crossed with a leap. It is whispered, just a little more. Real wealth, the kind that lasts, hides in plain sight. It is not your income. It is your behavior. When you see someone driving a luxury car, you are not admiring them. You are imagining yourself in it. That is the man in the car paradox. Nobody is impressed by your possessions. They are thinking about how they would look owning them. That is the illusion of status. It never points outward. It reflects inward. The truly wealthy master an invisible art. The art of understated living. Red was not proving anything. He drove an old car, skipped unnecessary purchases, and quietly invested small amounts every month. He knew that the loudest expense is often the quietest regret. Every dollar spent on impressing others is a dollar stolen from your own freedom. Society confuses price with value. We buy things to feel significant, not secure. But the more you need to display success, the less you truly own it. When your self-worth depends on being seen, you have already sold it. Here is the paradox of appearance. The richer you look, the less room you give yourself to grow. Status spending tightens the cage. Humility opens the door. Freedom is not what you buy, it is what you can afford to ignore. Use a 72-hour pause before any non-essential purchase. If it will not matter in 5 years, do not buy it for 5 minutes. Take a moment to remove the invisible audience from your life. The colleagues, friends, and strangers you try to impress. What choices would you make differently? Would you still want the same car, the same watch, the same house? When the applause fades, what is left? That quiet space, that is where real wealth begins. But even when we stop performing for others, subtler enemies remain. Fear and desire. One whispers that you will lose what you have. The other insists you do not have enough. Both drive the same mistakes. Buying high, selling low, rushing when patience would have paid more. Money does not just amplify opportunity, it amplifies who you are. Money magnifies emotion, turning pride into arrogance, fear into paralysis, and envy into obsession. That is why the next lesson is not about numbers, it is about psychology. Because if you cannot control your emotions will control your wealth. So which one runs your money? Your plan or your pulse? Coming up next, how patience, compounding, and emotional control quietly build fortunes while everyone else chases shortcuts. Part 3. Understanding wealth. Money is rarely lost in the market. It is lost in the mind. When prices fall, logic fades and emotion takes control. You do not check the data, you check your fear. The market drops, your stomach twists, and your instincts whisper, "Sell before it gets worse." Then the prices rise again, and that same fear transforms into greed. Buy before you miss out. In both moments, reason is gone. What remains is emotion disguised as strategy. Morgan Housel writes, "Doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are, and a lot to do with how you behave." The best investors are not the ones who know the most. They are the ones who stay calm the longest. They do not aim to be right every time. They aim to survive every time. Consider Warren Buffett. People call him the greatest investor alive, but his real genius is not picking stocks. It is patience. He has been investing since he was 10. Over 95% of his wealth came after 65. Think about that. The vast majority of his success happened after most people retire. That is not intelligence. That is endurance. Time is the ultimate multiplier. Compounding does not work because of miracles. It works because of consistency. You do not need extraordinary returns. You need ordinary returns sustained for an extraordinary length of time. Time rewards consistency. Ordinary returns held for an extraordinary time. But patience feels boring, and boredom feels painful. We crave excitement, yet wealth grows in silence. Every quick profit scheme feeds on our discomfort with waiting. Every next big thing appeals to the part of us that is terrified of being left behind. But the truth is simple. Compounding rewards the disciplined, not the desperate. There is a price for everything of value. The price of long-term wealth is short-term discomfort. Market volatility, fear, boredom, envy, These are not penalties. They are fees. They are the admission ticket for playing the long game. Most people quit because they mistake those fees for fines. They think they did something wrong when things get hard. But the pain is part of the process. The secret is emotional endurance, the ability to keep your strategy intact while your emotions are falling apart. Wealth is built in the moments you refuse to panic. It is the same principle in life. Success does not come from genius moves. It comes from surviving the seasons of doubt long enough to see your efforts compound. Time rewards consistency. Ordinary returns held for an extraordinary time. Now, here is the real reward. Money, at its best, does not buy luxury. It buys control. Control over your time, your choices, and your energy. That is what Housel calls the freedom dividend. Imagine waking up and doing something today simply because you want to, not because you have to. That is the highest return money pays. It is not the mansion or the car. It is the quiet Tuesday morning when you realize you own your day. We often chase money as if it is the goal, but it is only a tool. The goal is peace, the ability to decide how you spend your hours. The tragedy is that people spend their best years trading time for money, and their later years spending money to recover time. Freedom is not bought with a paycheck. It is built with discipline. Saving is not about being cheap. Every dollar saved is a small vote for your future freedom. At this point in the book, the tone shifts from strategy to self-awareness. Housel reminds us that money is personal. What makes sense for one person might be reckless for another. Every financial choice tells a story: your upbringing, your fears, your values. That is why you cannot copy someone else's playbook. They are playing a different game. If someone invests aggressively, perhaps it is because they have never experienced loss. If another person saves obsessively, perhaps it is because they once lost everything. You cannot judge the logic of their decisions without understanding the emotional context behind them. So, what is your story? Fear, freedom, or something in between? We like to believe we are rational, but we are not. We are reasonable, and that is enough. You do not need the mathematically perfect plan. You need the emotionally sustainable one. The perfect portfolio is useless if you abandon it at the first sign of panic. The reasonable plan, the one you can live with, will beat the perfect plan you cannot stick to. Every investor, every earner, every saver eventually learns the same truth. Money is not a math test. It is a test of character. And speaking of character, if you have found these ideas valuable, take a moment to support the Vital Pages. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, because when ideas like these spread, they do not just grow channels, they grow people. Now, let us go deeper, because the real question is not how to make more money. Part 4. The Long Game and Final Reflection. Every generation believes its financial challenges are unique, but human behavior repeats itself in endless loops. We chase, we fear, we overreach, and we start again. The markets change, technology evolves, but psychology does not. We are still the same species that panicked during the Great Depression, the same minds that feared the year 2000, the same hearts that will panic during the next crash. The patterns are timeless. The 2008 financial crisis proved it. Overnight, trillions of dollars vanished. But if you looked around, nothing physical had changed. The buildings still stood. The factories still ran. The people had not disappeared. What collapsed was not the economy. It was the story we believed about it. The story that house prices could never fall, that the system would always hold. When that belief cracked, the illusion of wealth shattered with it. That is the power of narrative. Economies are built on confidence, on shared stories that everyone agrees to pretend are true. The same applies to your personal life. The story you tell yourself about money shapes the reality you live in. If you tell yourself you will always struggle, you will find proof of it everywhere. If you decide you are capable of learning and improving, the same world suddenly looks full of opportunity. Money runs on imagination. We believe in the value of paper, the promise of numbers on a screen, the future we cannot yet see. So the most dangerous financial habit is not overspending. It is pessimism. Because pessimism kills imagination. Bad news sounds smarter, safer, more sophisticated. If someone says the world is falling apart, they sound like a realist. If someone says things will slowly get better, they sound naive. But history is proof that progress usually wins. Optimism is not ignoring risk. It is expecting setbacks and staying in the game anyway. Housel reminds us that every generation faces new challenges no textbook could predict. Wars, pandemics, recessions, technologies that rewrite the rules. History does not repeat itself, but human nature will. That is why instead of trying to predict the future, you prepare for uncertainty. Save not for a dream, but for the inevitable surprise. Have a margin of safety in your life. Extra cash, extra patience, extra grace for yourself when things go wrong. Survival is underrated. The people who stay in the game, financially, emotionally, creatively, are the ones who win by default. Because compounding, whether in money or in life, only works if you are still around to experience it. Here's another truth most people ignore. You will change. The person you are today is not who you will be in 10 years. Your goals will evolve. The things that feel urgent now may feel irrelevant later. That is why rigid plans often fail. You cannot build a 40-year financial roadmap when you have not yet met the future version of yourself. Flexibility is freedom. The goal is not to create a perfect plan. It is to create a plan you can adapt when life does what it always does. Surprises you. The older version of you will thank you for leaving space to pivot. Because wealth is not about locking yourself into one definition of success. It is about earning the ability to change your mind without breaking your life. There is a quiet wisdom in moderation. Save enough to be safe, but not so much that you never live. Work hard, but not so hard that you forget why. Spend thoughtfully, not fearfully. The best financial strategy is balance. A life that makes sense both on paper and in your heart. And at the heart of it all is one question. What is enough? Enough is not a number. It is a feeling. A line you draw to protect your peace. When you chase more, the target moves. Enough is the point where you stop letting comparison dictate your happiness. Enough is waking up content, not complacent. The day you realize freedom is richer than attention. The world will always sell you scarcity, telling you that you are behind, that you need more, that what you have is not enough. But you can opt out of that story. You can decide that your life is not a competition, and that the goal is not to win, it is to last. Morgan Housel ends The Psychology of Money with a simple truth. Wealth is what you do not see. The cars not bought, the restaurants skipped, the patience no one noticed. The quiet confidence of someone who knows they are fine without showing it. Money, at its best, buys time, the most valuable currency of all. Because when you control your time, you control your life. That is the real dividend, the one worth chasing. Remember how this story began. The janitor and the tech genius. The world saw one as rich and the other as poor, but time revealed who truly understood wealth. The janitor did not need to prove his success. He lived it. The executive wanted admiration. He lost himself in the performance. Both men were playing the same game with different rules. One played for status, the other for freedom. And that is what the psychology of money truly teaches us. Money is not a competition. It is a mirror. It reflects your habits, your values, and your patience. Master your behavior, and you master your wealth. So the next time you think about money, do not ask, how can I get more? Ask, what am I trading my time for? Because in the end, time is the only thing you cannot earn back. Imagine your life not defined by your bank account, but by your peace of mind. Imagine wealth measured not in dollars, but in mornings you own, choices you make, and people you love. That is the kind of wealth worth building. Money is a tool, not a test. It is meant to serve you, not own you. Use it to buy control of your time, not symbols for strangers. Let it fund your growth, not your ego. Because in the quiet moments, when you are free, when you are calm, when no one is watching, that is when you will realize you were never chasing money, you were chasing peace. If this story spoke to you, consider subscribing to The Vital Pages. Every week, we explore timeless books and modern minds that help you live a little wiser, work a little calmer, and think a little deeper.